Suppose we have to draw a rectangle by four separate lines, and the length of the rectangle is given and the width is also given. Now we have to calculate the 4 points. The first point, say this lower left corner is already given. For simplicity, say this is just 0 comma 0. So this point P1 is 0 comma 0. Now this point P2, we have to calculate its x and y. So x is length and y is 0, because if you see from P1 to P2, the x is changing by the length, but there is no change in y. So we can say its coordinate is length comma 0. From here to here, if we see, the y coordinate is changing, but there is no change in the x coordinate. So the coordinate of the P3 is length comma width. And if we see here, with respect to this, if you can see, there is no change in the x coordinate. So as P1 is also 0, x of P1 is 0, so x of P4 is also 0, but the y coordinate has changed. So the coordinate of P4 is 0 comma width. Now suppose I want to run this program, and I will explain it. If I start and I put a breakpoint here, so this breakpoint hits. Now to explain this thing, so a subroutine is called erase all. Inside that, actually I am deleting everything, right? Which is already drawn in the screen. Now if you see, the lines has been deleted. Now if the lines has been deleted, why the texts and the dimensions are not deleted? Because I have put them in a locked layer. That's why it has not been deleted. I have done this purposefully. If you want, you can also delete that if they are not in a locked layer. Anyway, now for this scenario, say the length is 100 and the width is 60. This is just a hard-coded value. You can take it as a user input through dialog box or command prompt or some file or Excel data, whatever it may be. But for simplicity, let's say length is 100 and width is 60. I have assigned these two values. So now length is 100 and width is 60. Now see, P1 is a point. P1 is a point. I'm declaring P1 is a point, but still no value is set. That's why it is saying it's P1 equal to nothing. But as soon as I create a point at 0 comma 0, so as we know, P1 is 0 comma 0. So using this create point function, we can actually assign 0 comma 0 coordinate to a P1. Now I want to just add a circle here just to denote that where the point is. It is not required, but it is just to have you it is just to help you to understand that where the point is basically. Now I want to calculate the point P2. So instead of creating a point, I am just adding length in the x coordinate and 0 in the y coordinate. So I get a new point here. Now I am adding another circle at the P2. Now once I have both P1 and P2 2 points, I can just add a line with these 2 points. Similarly, P3 is another point, and I can from the P2 I can get the P3 by adding 0 to the x coordinate, because there is no change in the x coordinate, and in the y coordinate I have to change the width. That way I will get the coordinate of P3. Now as soon as I get the point P3, I can add a circle if I want, and then just join from P2 to P3, right? And then from P3 to P4 we can go, but as we are going in the opposite direction, that's why I have written minus length. So in the x coordinate, length is actually being subtracted because we are going in the opposite direction, but there is no change in the y coordinate with respect to P3. Now we have got the point P4, we have drawn a circle at P4, and now just we can draw a line from P3 to P4. And finally we can draw from P4 to P1 another line. That way we can complete the drawing. Now this is not required that you have to follow all the steps. There is a simpler version of that, say module 1, but the program is much smaller. And if I can run it, the basic steps for erasing all this stuff is simply erase all of the objects except the objects which is in locked layer. The length and width are assigned. I have kept L and W uh, variable name, you can take anything. Now the point P1 is created, P2, P3, P4 is created. You do not need to add circle. And once the points are created, you just simply create the line by adding point to point. P1 to P2, P2, P1 to P2, P2 to P3, P3 to P4, P4 to P1. Just 4 lines and the rectangle is drawn. Now, this is a very simple program, but using those basic things like how many functions we have used here. Create point is one of the function which creates a point with a given x and y coordinate. It can be 0 comma 0, it can be any other value, right? And then there is a just add function which takes a point as a base point and it creates another point with respect to that by adding delta x and delta y, right? And once we have the points, we can just join 2 points. We can join 2 points by a line, or we can simply create a line or add a line by passing 2 points. So P1 is the start point of the line and P2 is the end point of that line. So this is a simple program. If you run it in a fresh drawing, for example, your layers are not locked, now in that case what will happen, you can delete all of them, not required. You can even delete it manually or programmatically, whatever the way. If in that case you don't even need this, if it is already clean, right? You just run it and you get a rectangle. Very simple program, right? Debug it. First, the length and width are assigned. It can be anything. You can take it from dialog box or from user input or anything. And then just create the first point P1, the lower left corner, and then the other 3 points are calculated with respect to each other. And once the points are calculated or created, you just add them by line. Very simple program. Thank you.